Hello, everyone. My name is Harvi Millar, and it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do this short video for you. Doing strategic planning is extremely important in the life cycle of any organization. Uh, it really involves looking at the future and trying to figure out what that might look like, and then deciding what decisions you're going to make today that would allow you to actually be successful in that future. So you have to have some kind of sense of what you believe the future might actually hold, and then position yourself as an organization to take advantage of that. I had a chance to take a look at some of your previous notes, and what I noted was that the discussion was centered around operations. It was very operational, it wasn't strategic in nature. Because it really focused on how you were going to function as an organization, your structure, your governance, your various roles and committees, almost discussing what might be a committee charter or the elements of a committee charter. So that's all good. It's important for an organization to have a sense of what its operational architecture would look like. But what should really govern that is what your strategic agenda is, because your strategic agenda will determine what the organizational structure should look like. So before you actually go there, I would say pause on that, decide what your strategic priorities are going to be, and then on that basis, you will look at what your organization should look like. Essentially, you will sort of developing like terms of reference for standing roles. I want to also suggest to you that the structure that you were looking at was highly functional in nature: marketing, your executive, membership, and so on, which actually did not necessarily give a picture of what kind of organization you were. That kind of structure is very typical. I want you to think a little bit more strategically about your structure, and instead of doing the classical functional orientation, I would strongly suggest that you consider much more of an orientation that is based on your business lines. So if you're going to offer artistic development or artistic exposure, that you have that as one of your pillars. If you're going to offer economic and entrepreneurship development, offer that as one of your pillars. So in essence, you have an executive committee that's responsible for the administration of the organization. But when you look at its structure, you structure it along the lines of your business units, quote unquote. And so that you might have somebody in charge of art, or you might have somebody in charge of community engagement, or somebody in charge of entrepreneurship and economic development. Then that looks like what you're about, ACCE, right? And then that way you could create cross-functional teams to do programming. One particular program might very well have arts and economics attached to it. Another one might have culture and community attached to it. So essentially, the people who are leading the four pillars of your program structure can get together to create initiatives that are sort of a cross-cutting, or it might very well be within each particular frame. A cultural event or an artistic event, and so on. So you will have a combination of those. All right. So that's just one recommendation before I get into this presentation. I want to quickly go through the key components of a strategic plan, because I'm not sure that we're going to get a chance to chat tomorrow, because I'm already tied up with an event with the Afrocentric Learning Institute. So here goes. I've decided to kind of put this presentation within the framework of what I call 8 P's of strategic planning. And so hopefully it will help you to appreciate the various components by looking at it through the lens of these 8 P's, all right? So the 8 P's that I've chosen are as follows, right? People. So essentially, who are you existing to serve? Because no organization typically exists to serve itself. It shouldn't. There should be some sort of stakeholder groups or some customer groups, core customers, And it is really about creating value for those core customers and stakeholders. That's why you exist. You believe somehow that you could provide value to these individuals, whether or not you're doing that voluntarily, in which case you are sort of a volunteer community-based organization, or whether or not you're doing that for monetary purposes. You see a for-profit opportunity, or it could be part of a sort of a social enterprise where, yes, you might generate profits, but really is to address a social issue. Totally up to you. But there would be people, meaning stakeholders and core customers, that you are attempting to serve. A purpose. The organization has to have a purpose. Why do you exist? Why should you exist? And so that should be your mission. And you need to justify that. The prize, what I call the prize, is another way of thinking about your vision. The prize that you're working towards. What is our ultimate prize? And so that beacon on the hill is your vision, the ultimate goal. Principles. So what will kind of guide the behavior of the individuals that are actually running the organization? So what beliefs and what principles do you hold dear? Because that will determine what you decide to do or not do, and how you decide to do things. It will determine your ethics, your professionalism, and all these sorts of issues. Products, and I would say products in terms of products and services, like you have service products and tangible products. So the offering of products and services, what is it that you're offering? What is ACE about? What are you guys going to offer to the different customer segments or stakeholder segments that you're going to engage with? And so that's kind of connected to what we call your value proposition. What value do you propose to deliver? And the value comes through the customer or the stakeholder engaging with you through these products and services. Your persona. So the persona speaks to your brand. So the brand image of the organization. What are you going to be known for? Right? Priorities now. Priorities essentially will emerge after you sort of decide the overall strategic framework of the organization. So who are you serving? What products and services you're delivering? What's your mission? What's your vision? What values do you hold dear? What kind of image do you want to have? What kinds of products and services do you want to offer? Then the priorities come. The priorities come from where you see gaps in terms of your performance. So strategic priorities come from the gaps in terms of your value proposition. If you're not delivering good value to customers or stakeholders, then you may have a priority to close that gap. All right? If there's a need that is being underserved and that no one is serving that, but you feel that you're in a position to serve that need, then that could become a priority for the organization. So strategic priorities tend to be externally focused, building relationships, engaging community, delivering value, and so on. And that's on the priority side that are strategic in nature. However, there are also operational priorities, because to be able to deliver value to your customers and stakeholders, you have to have internal capabilities to do that. You have to have certain skills. You have to have access to certain types of technology. You need to have a certain kind of governance model and governance practice. You may need to have policies, processes, right? So all of those things tend to be operational in nature. And those operational priorities are meant to support the strategic priorities. There has to be this balance between them. So if I want to, say, offer entrepreneurship development capabilities or knowledge to a constituency, then within our own organization, do we have that capacity to deliver or to design the training? Or maybe it is just a matter of outsourcing that, but now we need skills to manage the outsourcing relationship that would bring that service to the organization. All right? So I call the operational priorities actually the prowess of the organization. So where I have priorities, I will actually let that be the strategic priorities, and prowess being the internal capacity and skills that you have to deliver those strategic priorities. So that's the 8P framework that I sort of put together. And I'll go through them very briefly to assist you, right? So I have a number of questions that are supposed to help guide your discussion. So who are your core customers? Who is it that you want to serve? People between the ages of what? 18 to 30, whether or not it is only males, only females, both genders, only people in Halifax and Dartmouth, or the entire province. So you got to decide that. What are the demographics? And then once you actually scope out who you want to deal with, then you have to also identify what needs and challenges do they have. I mean, because your purpose for existing will be to address some of those needs and challenges. Not necessarily all of them, but some of them. So what challenges do they have that might be of interest to the organization? What opportunities do they present that you may want to take advantage of, right? Are there other organizations doing similar things, in which case that you might have to decide, why should we exist if another organization is doing the same thing? Is it that the organization is not doing it well? Or is it that there's some gaps still that we can fill by getting involved, right? So what gaps exist in fulfilling the needs of the customer/stakeholder groups that are of interest to you? So when you are sitting down to have that discussion, just brainstorm initially all of the possible customer groups or stakeholder groups, but then ultimately you have to whittle that down to a subset where you say, this is what we will focus on, because you may not have the capacity to be all things to all people. So you're going to have to focus, all right? The next thing is your purpose or your passion. So once you understand your customer needs, you might decide that we want to really just enable young people to become entrepreneurs. If that's your focus, then that's your mission, right? Because we don't want people waiting till their mid-30s, 40s to start thinking about building wealth. From the time they're teenagers, we want to start thinking about economic opportunities and entrepreneurial opportunities and a way of creating wealth for themselves and their families and their communities. So in a case like that, you might decide that's what you want your focus to be. But first, have it on the table, all the possible needs, and then decide what the organization is really passionate about, that it wants to address. Some organizations want to address hunger, the need to eliminate hunger. Some want to address homelessness, the need to eliminate homelessness. Some of us want to address educational issues and gaps in terms of student performance in the African Nova Scotian community. So we decide that our mission is to really create opportunities for learners to maximize their academic potential. So things of that nature. So it's important to look at what you have on the table and decide what you want to focus on. And then ultimately capture that in the form of a statement. So what will ACE's purpose be? Its role, its reason for existing. And I just gave an example. The mission is to create opportunities that empower Black youth to realize their full potential by leveraging the synergistic power that exists at the intersection of art, community, culture, and economics. So something like that could be a potential example of a mission statement, that you are realizing that these four components can really create significant opportunities for Black youth and use that to help them empower themselves to be the best person that they can be. So that's just an example. Prize, the ultimate goal, so as I said, is the vision. And one of the ways to think about that is, how is the world going to change if ACE exists? If ACE is successful in accomplishing its mission, how is the world going to be better? When you say the world, we're not talking about Europe and Asia and all of that. Just the world that you decide to focus on. How is it going to be better? What benefits will you bring? What will your legacy be? What accomplishments will you have? So all of those will help you decide what your vision is, right? So the vision is that sort of big goal that you want to have, to be the best, to be most known as, to be the one organization that is an example in terms of how to engage and empower young people to be their best. Maybe something like that. So I just sort of gave an example that I just made up off the top of my head, saying a world where every youth has the tools and courage to realize their aspirations and transform their lives for the better. So if you're successful in working with young people and exposing them to art, culture, and all those things, and building skills and capacities in them, maybe this could be where you would end up, right? Principles, guiding values, beliefs, and so on. So essentially, the organization needs to have a set of beliefs, a set of guiding principles. So if you're going to talk about art, culture, right, community, and economics, then clearly you are, you're gonna, creativity will be an important value. Respect for others, because people will have different views in that environment, particularly around how you go about accomplishing things. A passion for innovation, doing things differently, not the same old stale way. Or collectivism and collaboration, you're going to need that. So I mean, I just throw those out there as sample values or beliefs that art, culture, and economics are mutually reinforcing. You have to believe that. If you don't believe that, why put them together, right? Art is an essential ingredient of happiness. You want to promote that. Young people have the power to change their lives and their communities. If you don't believe that, then you won't bother with an organization of that nature. So these are just examples of belief statements. And that should really help you in terms of how you do business, right? The things that you hold dear are important. So what products and services and or experiences will you offer to your customers slash stakeholders? Now, I'm not sure if you're just a membership organization, and so in that sense, you exist to serve your members, and with that membership organization, then essentially you have an executive that is doing program development and program dissemination and program delivery for its members. In which case, yes, it is for the wide public, but then you're inviting the public to become members. And then you're working to kind of create value for your membership. So when we talk about your customers and stakeholders, it could be people that are detached from the organization, where you're just serving folks on the outside, you're a group serving customers, or that you're a membership organization and that this membership organization has to think about how it's going to serve its members. So your members are your customers. And organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, where they focus on the members' needs and develop programs and initiatives to empower their members to be successful economically, certainly all the things I've talked about so far are still relevant, right? Whether or not it is a membership organization or it is just for the general public. Persona, so I've already mentioned what kind of brand do you want to have, what do you want to be known for, particularly if you're going to attract people to the organization, you have to be known for something. And your branding should not just be by accident, it should be by design. So based on what you want to be known for, then you have to make sure that that's also consistent with the kind of products and services that you're delivering, right? Branding is more than just fancy logos and so on. That's cool, but the fancy logo have to be reflective of the mission, the kind of organization that you have. So there have to be some sort of alignment between those. All right. So I just had some examples that you want to. What do you want to be known for? What would be conjured up in the minds of people when they hear the name ACE? So totally engage with youth, innovating solutions for youth challenges, professional organization that is youth-led, a model for youth organization. I don't know. I just made up a bunch of things without actually having all the information from you. I might be totally off key here. If it's a membership organization, then it's a different set of brand statements that you want to have. So what are the priorities now? After you kind of get a good sense of who your members are, what their needs are, and all those sorts of things, your mission, vision, then you have to say our priorities have to be such that they help us achieve our mission. All right? So what are the drivers of our mission? Is it engagement with people? And right now, a lot of the examples that I've given, I've sort of placed you guys as an organization that will engage with young people, right? Through arts, community, culture, and economics. If that's not the model, but rather a membership model, there could be slightly different priorities. But for now, I'm just giving you that the examples that I have on there is based on that kind of organizational design. So, in terms of what strategic priorities would be, typically they focus on enhancing your value to your customers and stakeholders. They tend to be concerned about generating financial resources or revenues and so forth. So that is typically the broad area of strategic focus. So strengthening engagement with young people in terms of being able to give them greater value, enhancing your product and service scope. What products and services do you offer right now, and can you improve on that? Strengthening your value proposition. If you feel that you're not strong enough in your value proposition, you want to strengthen that. You want to ensure alignment between what you're offering as value and the needs of the customers and stakeholders that you want to engage with, right? Expanding your financial resources. So if you are a not-for-profit organization, you're going to need money to certainly do the things you want to do. So you're going to have to expand your financial resources and so on. So I've given you some examples of strategic priorities. Now I've not gone into the initiatives. So how do we strengthen engagement with youth? What are some of the activities we could undertake? How do we enhance our product and service scope? So doing research, find out what needs are, and then doing some product and service development, you know? How do we expand our financial resources? Fundraising, establishing relationships with other types of funding entities, or maybe with other organizations that do similar work where we could actually create some synergies, all those sorts of things like that. So you got to figure out what are the specific initiatives that will drive those priorities for you. Prowess, the skills and abilities that will drive the priorities. So before you start talking about your org structure and roles and all responsibilities, first know exactly what your mission is. First, also know what products and services you want to deliver, how you want to deliver them, who you're delivering them to. And then is when you begin to ask the question, what's the best organizational structure that we should have that would allow us to be able to do that? So you build your organizational prowess. So strengthening your structure could be a priority. Improving your efficiency and effectiveness of your program delivery. If you're not delivering programs often enough or effectively enough, then that may be an area you want to focus on. Enhancing your skills and capacity around administration and governance. So some of what you were doing already in terms of accountability, and then setting up the committees and giving them their terms of reference and so on. Enhancing your capacity to do product and service development, because you're going to have to get clever as needs of your stakeholders change. You're going to have to come up with new products and services. So if you cannot design, if you don't have the agility to design new products and services, you may very well find that you might be missing the boat here, right? Expanding your membership could be another area that you want to think about. And then improving member commitment and loyalty to ACE. One of the things with volunteer organizations that we don't pay attention to is that unless we are seeing the impact that we want to have in a very quantum way, people could get very tired, lose their energy and motivation, and so you might find yourself wanting to constantly get new members and so on. So you have to then think about how you're going to keep your members motivated, right, and interested and committed to the organization. How do you make the mission relevant to them all the time? So from time to time, you have to have those discussions. You have to engage them. Is the mission still relevant? Are you still committed to the mission? People grow up, they get engaged with other things, and then they want to move on. And so organizations tend to go through this sort of life cycle of changing members, and sometimes some people return. We don't know. So the point I'm making here is that think about how you're going to keep your members committed and loyal, particularly if it's a volunteer organization. In that case, it may be an annual party that you guys have to celebrate your accomplishments, recognizing each other, doing something interesting that keeps you committed. All right. So I've gone through 8 P's that should give you enough of a framework that if you take each of those P's, but you cannot just divide them up among different groups and then have them come back, because there is a sequence to it, in the sense that your people will determine what your mission and their needs will determine what your mission and purpose ought to be. The pursuit of your mission is linked to your vision. And then the values that you come up with should reinforce the vision and the mission. And it is then when we now say, okay, given that framework, what is it that we want to offer? So you have to now have a discussion by understanding who your customers are and your stakeholders are, what's your value offering. And then through your own analysis, in terms of where gaps are, you begin to identify the priorities, strategic priorities. And then, based on what you decide to pick as strategic priorities, you look internally at the organization and say, hang on a second, we don't have those skills, or we need to improve our governance if we're going to do this well. And then you develop your prowess, which is your internal capacity and capabilities, all right? And then don't forget, for each of those priorities, you're going to have to come up with a couple of initiatives, one or more initiatives that will push them. And let me just mention this to you finally, is that when you're brainstorming priorities, you will come up with a list of priorities. It doesn't mean that all the priorities you came up with you have to pursue. You're going to now have to prioritize the priorities, okay? And then once you've done that, then go look at the operational potential priorities. And then once you've identified those, prioritize them as well. The other last level of priorities. So there's prioritization at the sort of goal level, but then when you come up with the different strategies or the initiatives to achieve a goal, or what I like to call a priority, you may have multiple initiatives, in which case you have to prioritize them as well. So if there are 3 actions for achieving a particular goal, can we do all 3? Or should we prioritize them and say we'll do B first, and then we could consider A, and if we have enough resources or time, we will consider C. So that's another level that's prioritization at the initiative level. Okay, so that has to also happen. So the entire process is fairly structured and could lead you to a good plan. But recognize that plan is not a fait accompli, because over time you're going to have to update that plan and make sure that it's relevant, because the times are changing, and that there's a set of underlying assumptions that you would have made when you were developing the plan. But those assumptions from time to time may change and may be challenged, and so therefore you have to constantly update your plan. All right? Hopefully this is helpful. Good luck, and tomorrow I will see if I could connect with you. If I can't, then hopefully you would have had enough material here to help you on your way. Thank you.